Crucifixion functions as an engineered system of biological collapse, forcing the body to work against its own survival mechanisms. This anatomical model illustrates the immediate physiological shift. Once the body is locked into this position, the trajectory toward death is governed by a sequenced cascade of degradation. We can map this process chronologically, tracking the biological engine from the initial physical shock through to terminal organ failure. This forensic analysis focuses on the structural conflict between musculoskeletal exhaustion and the body's continuous demand for oxygen. Assessing the true nature of this execution requires examining human biology pushed beyond its homeostatic limits. The path to systemic failure begins with the Roman flagrum. Weighted with lead and bone, the instrument shreds the dermis and underlying skeletal muscle before the victim reaches the cross. This widespread tissue damage initiates hypovolemic shock, rapidly draining the circulatory volume and depriving the system of its operating fluid. The heart attempts to compensate by accelerating, pumping the remaining blood at an unsustainable, erratic rate. Forcing the victim to carry the 100-pound patellum, the horizontal crossbeam, applies direct pressure to these flayed surfaces, compounding the raw trauma. As blood volume drops, the brain receives less oxygen-rich blood, causing disorientation and severe vertigo before the victim arrives at the execution site. By the time the execution begins, the cardiovascular system is already in a state of measurable failure. Historical art frequently depicts nails driven through the palms, but the weight of a human body would immediately tear through such soft tissue. The skeletal structure dictates a different anchor point. This gap between the carpal bones, known as Destot space, provides the necessary support for the body's weight. The hardware used to bridge this space consists of 7-inch iron spikes with square tapered edges, designed for maximum grip within the bone. Jiving the spike through this corridor crushes the median nerve, the largest nerve pathway in the hand. This damage locks the hand into an involuntary claw, while sending a continuous, high-intensity pain signal directly to the brain. Gravity pulls the torso downward against the fixed angle of the arms, eventually causing both shoulders to dislocate completely. Evidence for the lower fixation point exists in the archaeological record. This heel bone was found with a large iron nail still fused through the calcaneum, anchoring defeat to the vertical post. These fixation points were selected to ensure the body remained suspended for days, while maintaining consciousness through agonizing nerve compression. The physics of suspension alter the mechanics of the chest. Gravity pulls the torso down, while the arms pull up, forcing the ribcage into a position of permanent, passive inhalation. In this state, taking air in is effortless. However, exhaling requires the victim to generate an upward force to release the tension on the diaphragm. Every breath out forces the victim to push their full weight off the iron spike in their feet, scraping their wounded back against the wood to gain the necessary leverage. When the muscles inevitably fail to provide this lift, carbon dioxide builds up in the blood, leading to hypercapnia. This accumulation triggers respiratory acidosis, rapidly dropping the blood's pH level into a toxic range. The resulting acidic blood poisons the nerve endings and triggers violent, full-body muscle cramps, making the effort to breathe even more difficult. The geometry of the cross creates a respiratory trap where the victim essentially drowns in their own carbon dioxide. Eventually, the victim reaches a state of absolute exhaustion. Asphyxiation begins as the muscles can no longer lift the chest to exhale. Systemic trauma triggers disseminated intravascular coagulation. Small-scale clotting occurs throughout the vascular system, obstructing blood flow and causing localized tissue death while the heart is still beating. Organ systems begin to fail in a rapid sequence. The kidneys are among the first to shut down as blood pressure collapses and dehydration becomes absolute. Blood pools in the legs due to orthostatic hypotension, leaving the brain to prioritize only the most essential life-sustaining functions. In its final moments, the brain releases a flood of neurochemicals to manage the total collapse of the nervous system, resulting in a state of delirium. At this stage, the body has ceased to function as a unified organism and is now a collection of isolated, failing systems. Extreme physiological stress causes clear fluid to collect in the pleural space of the lungs and the pericardial sac surrounding the heart. The heart, starved of oxygen and compressed by this fluid, enters a state of chaotic quivering before the electrical signals finally cease. The physical and emotional strain frequently leads to a terminal cardiac rupture, the heart literally tearing under the pressure. Roman soldiers used a spear to verify death. This corroded iron spearhead shows the type of weapon used to deliver the final check. An upward strike would pierce the lung and the pericardial sac, releasing a mixture of separated clear fluid and dark settled blood, the clinical proof of death. These methods of suspension leave permanent, square-shaped indentations in the carpal bones, providing a skeletal signature that pathologists can use to identify this specific trauma thousands of years later. The clinical evidence etched into these remains reveals a process designed to systematically dismantle every survival mechanism of the human body.